Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy riddles, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. Ooh,
Alright.
we will get into it when we get into the first topic, but I have contained many layers of rage over the
And,
course of the last week or so.
and I'm
Uh,
your host. And I'm your host. Last time, Lil Wannabe, they brainstorm pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am looking forward to no longer containing this rage.
Okay. Well, it might be a relative. Well, no, it's Dalton. I know how he works. So our first topic of the night will be the review, since I had seen it last day, of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey.
Uh, you can go first.
Well, kind of starting off with uh, non spoilers, just my general opinion. Uh, and well, you know what? I'll read the text I sent Dolan immediately after I'd watched it.
Mhm.
Hold on. Okay. It's serviceable. Well, actually, you know what? I will say this because I feel like this is pretty indicative because I've only ever said this about like one other movie.
Mhm.
I felt nothing.
Which, by
It's
the
pretty.
way, go ahead.
It's just pretty meh, you know.
I will withhold my say until it is my turn.
I think it's well, it is missing like a good portion of certain things that are very entertaining from what I remember of the story. Uh, Music wise, you know, I like Ludwig Göransson a lot, so I enjoyed it. It could have been better. It's obviously. Uh, I will say I do think a lot of the actors tried. I don't think it was enough, but I recognize their. I'm not gonna blame them. I don't
I
really think.
don't hold it against the actors, especially the younger, more inexperienced ones.
But yeah, I think that should kind of cover my general thoughts. Really,
Okay, now here's the thing. Cards on the table. The whole bloody fucking tarot deck on the table. I despise with every fiber of my being Christopher Nolan's style and aesthetic, or as I call it, his adherence to anti-aesthetic, or I sometimes refer to it as boredom as an aesthetic. And the only movie of his that I have ever liked was The Dark Knight, and that was on the basis of Heath Ledger and Morgan Freeman, not anything to do with Christopher Nolan. So, so for the record, yes. Was I biased against Christopher Nolan from the word go? Yes. Was I honest and open about the fact that he is the very last person working or living in Hollywood today that you should have trusted with the Odyssey, whether it was his idea or whether some studio fucker brought it to him? Yes. I have made no secret of the fact that I despise everything about Christopher Nolan's style of filmmaking and that his particular style of filmmaking was the worst possible medium you should have used uh, for the Odyssey. All that being said, though, it is bad in all the ways I expected it to be bad, and that sort of cushioned the blow a little bit for me because I basically on first blush, I got exactly what I expected to get. The problem is, I then proceeded to think about it afterwards. And the more thought I put into this movie, the deeper and deeper and deeper my hate for Christopher Nolan generally, this particular movie in particular, has grown. You could basically substitute the rest of my final thoughts the with the hate monologue from the end of my mouth, and I must scream. Because the more the okay, the best way I can put this for the uninitiated is there are a couple of sets of people that I can see having feelings about this movie. The first set of people are the people who know nothing about the Odyssey and absolutely adore Christopher Nolan. They will love this movie fine. The second set of people are people who like Christopher Nolan's style and know the Odyssey. Said people, it's about a 50-50 shot as to whether they like this movie. Their love for the Odyssey might cancel out their usual enjoyment of Christopher Nolan. The third set of people are the people who like Christopher Nolan but love the Odyssey deeply, in which case those people I do not think will be happy with this movie. And then there is the fourth category, the category I fall into, which is I hate Christopher Nolan's boredom as an aesthetic, anti-aesthetic art style, and I love the Odyssey deeply. If this movie did one thing, and I will credit this movie with this, if this movie did one thing, it reminded me how much I love the Odyssey and how much pretty much any version of the Odyssey can be good, except this one. This movie is basically. You remember how we were very, very, very complimentary about Del Toro's Frankenstein? Because that was the perfect combination of a IP or source material with a director's creative vision. This is the Bizarro world or the antimatter universe version of that. This is the worst combination of a director and source material I have ever seen, which again, I was expecting. But there are also other problems with it, which we will get into in due course once we get into non-spoilers. I'm done.
You mean spoilers?
Or, yeah, once we get into spoilers, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think. Okay, I think we mentioned this before when we watched trailers. It lacked a certain gravitas. That was evident, again from just everything we had seen and read of it. Um, Again, I think we were both in agreement that Matt Damon really good actor. I will not discredit him on that. I just don't think he was really for the part of Odysseus.
I will go one step further. I think he could have made a decent Odysseus if someone who gave a fuck about the source material they were adapted the Odyssey and had cast him as Odysseus. Because he's done the clever bastard in an unusual circumstance before. He did that in The Martian. If he had brought the same energy he brought to Mark Watney to Odysseus, I think he could have made a semi-decent Odysseus. He was just also under the direction of Christopher Nolan, and unless you are a once-in-a-generation talent like a Heath Ledger or a Morgan Freeman, you can't get anything good out of Christopher Nolan because he treats boredom and the absolute eschewing of aesthetic as his primary art style. and so he has everyone give the most monotonous performance they can because he is a fucking robot who, for some reason, people let make movies. But go ahead.
Dialogue wise, it was off too. Um,
Yeah,
I think the thing is, like, a lot of the older actors actually seem to be playing it more like speaking in a more older kind of dialect.
they tried to play it straight more. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even think that's really like the actor's fault for some reason. Like, okay, spoilers, obviously,
Hmm.
Telemachus or Telemachus or however I believe it's been pronounced, because well, old names are funny like that. Uh, would say dad instead of father, and I don't know. It's like the weirdest little nitpick for me there, but I feel like father just has more uh, weight to it.
A lot of people, believe it or not, that was a reoccurring theme I saw in a lot of people's reviews. Um, I think that if this was a more stylized telling of the Odyssey, like say Epic the Musical, um, or Stephen Fry's version,
Well, okay,
um,
even Epic the Musical still had Telemachus, uh, say father.
they did, and so did Stephen Fry's novelized version. I'm just saying that in something like Epic the Musical, you can get away with something like Dad a little bit easier. And it I'm gonna sound a bit like a broken record when I say this, but um Christopher Nolan's overly self-serious style doesn't help here either. Because if this was a movie that leaned into more of the grandeur and the fun and the wonder and the like whimsy, the adventurous aspect of the Odyssey, that might not have felt so weird. But this is a version of the Odyssey entirely shoved up its own ass because because being a self-serious bastard with a stick shoved so far up their ass they could double as a scarecrow is Christopher Nolan's whole thing, and he wants the serious. He wants the serious dramatic filmmaker kudos. And if you're gonna play the serious dramatic filmmaker kudos card, then you need to go all the way with it. Which for a historical, semi-mythical epic like the Odyssey means, and this has been a thing since the 1920s, when you're doing a historical, mythological epic like the Odyssey, you at most go with like a Shakespearean dialect, or at the very, very most recent, you go like 19th century English dialect. But Christopher Nolan wanted to translate it for modern audiences, quote unquote, and fucked it. And I'm not even saying that you can't do the Odyssey for a modern audience, because Epic the Musical managed it, and it is a phenomena in its own right. And Stephen Fry's novelization managed it, and that's supposed to be targeted at kids mostly. And
You know,
either of those versions did more to make the story of the Odyssey relatable for modern audiences than this did.
something. I
Mhm.
just thought about it. Adaptation by Terry Pratchett of the Odyssey would go so hard.
Oh my God. I why is Sir Terry Pratchett dead? Why?
Life.
Um. Well, yes, I know, but like, I would gladly sacrifice Christopher Nolan on an altar if it means we could necromance Terry Pratchett back into existence. Granted, you wouldn't have to do much to convince me to sacrifice Christopher Nolan on an altar because I hate Christopher Nolan. But if it was specifically we will get Terry Pratchett back, I I would I would do so with glee. Honestly, honestly, I think Sir Terry Pratchett would probably approve of Epic the Musical, and I know he would definitely approve of Stephen Fry's version because Stephen Fry's version has that very classic, like Oxbridge, but trying to be relatable, almost like Monty Python-esque quality to it. Um, that Sir Terry Pratchett's work also frequently that uniquely British, smart but still having fun with it sense of humor that like highly educated British people have. Stephen Fry brought that to the Odyssey very, very well. I am guessing that if we got a version of the Odyssey from Terry Pratchett that wasn't in Discworld, um it would probably resemble the version that we got from Stephen Fry. In Discworld, I'm pretty sure there have already been references to the Odyssey in like a third of the Discworld books. Because the idea of like stories as a force in the universe is a huge deal in the Discworld mythos. So I'm sure in fact I know there are several references to the Odyssey in Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I just can't think of any of the specific examples off the top of my head because there have been so many. Go ahead.
I was trying to. Weirdly, okay, so a whole motif with Christopher Nolan, basically all his films, more or less,
Hmm.
is time, right?
Hmm.
I feel like, or like, hell, well, nonlinear storytelling, actually. Um, not he hasn't done that relatively recently, mind you, but that was a thing he did a lot of. Uh, I think that would have been beneficial here.
He did tell the story out of order here.
Well, he didn't do it right, and it felt off to me.
Well, yes, but that's everything with the possible exception of Memento with Christopher Nolan. Um, Now, mind you, there's a stronger argument for telling the story out of order with the Odyssey because the Odyssey is told in many ways secondhand, i.e., you get characters relaying the parts of the story to other characters. The motif of um the sharing of tales or sharing of stories is a frequent thing in the Odyssey. Like you've got Me- um Mel is it Melanois? Um husband of husband of Helen. I believe it's Melanois, but don't quote me. Um Tells Telemachus what he knows about what happened to Odysseus and then sends him on to somebody else who tells him more of what he knows what happened to Odysseus. Then you've got Odysseus like washing up on people's shores and telling his like his side of the story and so on. So there is this theme of stories being relayed between people and other people rather than just telling the story straightforward. Now, mind you, every other version of the Odyssey tends to get rid of that element because it doesn't really work in. It doesn't even really fully work in the written context, because of course the Odyssey, as we have it in its written forms, are a transcription of a bard or a troubadour, or well, the Greek equivalent, um, tell it, telling the story verbally. But most versions of the Odyssey get rid of the stories aspect of the Odyssey and just tell the story from the point that Odysseus leaves Troy to the point that he gets back, with occasional interludes with the plot with Telemachus and Penelope at home dealing with the suitors. And we will get back to that in a moment. But this story in particular, I'm less unwilling, or I'm less annoyed with Christopher Nolan doing the telling the story out of order thing. Granted, he still doesn't do it right, and that's where my charity ends. Because if you were going to do the story told out of order in this way, the sensible thing would be just to adapt the storytelling element that most versions of the Odyssey eschew, and have it be a series of like flashbacks and flash forwards intercut with each other. But he didn't do that. He tries to have it both ways, and he also cuts in places it makes no sense to cut for drama, I guess, or what Christopher Nolan thinks is drama, even though he has no emotions and therefore no capacity to understand what the other people with emotions think or feel about anything. Um, but holy hell, you you had the one instance where I would have been semi forgiving of the telling the story out of order shit, and he fucked it. Um, but anyway, go on with what you were saying. I'm sorry, I rambled there.
I don't remember.
The theme
Uh,
of time, the theme of time and telling the story out of order is, I think, where you started there.
right. To be fair, from the first teaser trailer that they did, I was always under the impression that most of the story was going to be told, like it was going to be heard from the perspective of Telemachus, right?
Hmm.
Like that just kind of came across that, which I think would have been interesting. You know, um, and I realize, I don't know. To be fair, I think I've always been under the impression that the Odyssey would have always works best if it was like a miniseries or something, or like a TV show.
I mean, that's what they did with it in the late '90s.
Yeah, I
The
watched.
'90s. Go ahead.
I did watch that. It's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. Um, surprising, no one. The '97 version is so much better than this. Um, even though all the hipster cinephile rats will never cease filleting Christopher Nolan.
Take a breath.
But yeah, surprising no one, the '97 one is still probably the best adaptation that's not in some kind of other medium.
Okay, I also say this. It really does lack a certain. Okay, you know what? Actually, yeah. Uh, okay, kind of trying to finish out the time thing.
Hmm.
It doesn't have a good scale of it either, actually.
No, and that's rather important with the Odyssey in particular, because part of the beauty and tragedy and adventure of the Odyssey comes from poor OV trying his damnedest to get home and something occurring to fuck him. And you don't really feel the passage of time hear much, which again is crucial to us relating to and understanding what Odysseus is going through.
Yeah, I just um yeah, I feel like it would have felt been better if, ironically, if it was following Telemachus' story mostly, and we were just getting like we were hearing the stories, and, like seeing the fantastical, like
I-
imagining. But
if each like major plot was essentially narrated by a storyteller, you mean?
yes, yeah, which kind of pivoting from that to the next thing I was going to talk about is it has a really distinct lack of, and to be fair, it's from Christopher Nolan, so this is supposed to, this is kind of a given, but it has such a severe lack of fantasy or fantasticalness that the Odyssey really does need, given everything that happens in there, that is inherently fantastical.
Yeah, okay. Now here comes part
Go on.
one of the many rants that must be going on about this fucking thing. How, in the very literal names of the gods, do you in fact leave out the gods in an adaptation of the Odyssey? And I'm gonna say yes, he left out all of them, even though Athena is technically there in the loosest possible sense, because it's very obvious from the way that it's shot and the way the story is told that what Odysseus thinks of as Athena is in fact just a PTSD hallucination. And I'm sorry, but you cannot meaningfully tell the story of the Odyssey by leaving the gods out. You can kind of get away with that with the Iliad somewhat, because the Iliad is ultimately a war story. It's a story of a war. And while the gods are most definitely involved in the Trojan War in the actual Iliad, you can still tell the story of Troy like they did in the early 2000s and leave the gods out for the most part. You cannot do that with the Odyssey because the Odyssey is the foremost story of adventures journeying like a heroic adventure and the encounters with gods and monsters and everything in between in the entire fucking Western canon. Doing the Iliad without the gods can be done because it's a war story. But the Odyssey is first and foremost an adventure story and a fantastical mythological adventure story. In fact, the most mythological and adventurous adventure story in the history of the Western canon. You cannot leave the gods and magic out, which, apart from a couple monsters here and there and Circe, they entirely do here. And so I will put a pause. I will put a pin in it here because the Cersei rant needs to be its entirely own thing. So back over to you, Brainstormer, until
Well,
the next rant comes up.
I mean, I was gonna thing I wanted to bring up that kind of was a big irk for me was Polyphemus.
Go ahead.
Mainly because I don't know what I was expecting, but I was still disappointed by how simple the design was. Um, and also it kind of cut out like a lot of the actual interesting stuff regarding the part that has Polyphemus interact with Odysseus.
Okay. Now commenceth rant number 2. Chris, Chris, my brother in intellectual pretensions. The only thing I will consider myself my brother, your brother in, Chris. But you fucked up the inciting incident of the entire escapade. without the nobody context, without Polyphemus actually talking to and engaging with Odysseus and being able to pray for Poseidon to punish Odysseus, we have no fucking story. That is the inciting incident. That is the moment where Odysseus's cleverness gets ahead of him and it thereby fucks him, and is the entire reason why he spends a decade and some change not getting home because he stabbed Poseidon's son in the eye, and he would have gotten away with it if he had just stuck with the nobody thing. But he wanted the credit, and so he let his ego get away with him, and so he spent a decade and some change not going home because Poseidon was angry with him. How in the fuck? Also, this is a slightly more niche reason why this doesn't work, but I'm a pedantic fucker, so I will point this out. So you want to take a guess as to what Polyphemus, the name, actually means in Greek?
I'm not guessing.
Polyphemus comes from poly, meaning many, and phemos, meaning voices. So Polyphemus is literally the many-voiced one, and yet he barely fucking talks. In fact, I don't think he ever talks. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You've seen it sooner, or
Uh,
you've seen it more recently than I have.
he spoke it. He spoke. Okay, so again, spoilers if anyone gives a shit. Um, it was after they stabbed his eye and they were still trapped. Uh, he's praying to Poseidon. You can barely understand it. It's basically mumbling.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you took the majority of the dialogue away from the character whose name literally means the many-voiced one. And incidentally, if you gave a shit about adapting the Odyssey, which I know you fucking didn't because you decided to turn it into a post-war PTSD story, Chris, but assuming for the sake of argument you felt like actually adapting the thing you were trying to adapt, something that I would have liked to have seen and would have at least would have won you 1 point in an Odyssey adaptation that most people haven't done, because his name is Polyphemus, the many-voiced one. I would have liked to have seen a version where when Polyphemus talks, it was like many voices echoing against each other. That would have been a nice little nod for the mythology and etymology nerds out there. But of course, no, you didn't even leave in the nobody scene. You didn't give Odysseus a reason to feel. That's the other thing. Like 85 to 90% of all of the things that make Odysseus clever, all of the interesting and like in ingenious ways he gets his way into and out of shit, they're not here. He hell, he spends like 2 of the movie guilty over doing the Trojan horse some fucking how. Because you didn't want to tell a story about the Odyssey or Odysseus. You wanted to make um you wanted to make the Odyssey a like post-war story like Rambo or like any of the movies that came out after fucking 9/11. But instead of coming up with a in story context reason to have those themes or those moments, you just decided to hollow the entire goddamn thing out and turn the Odyssey into a like post-war PTSD story for effectively no reason. Okay, continue.
All right. All right. You know what? Okay. Underworld scene. I did really dig that.
It was okay.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I'm
I
not
won't.
gonna say anything particularly negative against it
I think
because
it had a certain. It had a far better like atmosphere than most other scenes in the movie.
yeah, it was the one moment where Christopher Nolan actually went, shit, I should probably put some mythology in this mythology movie at some point. Um, although there are things about it I will criticize, like for example, in the story, Odysseus ends up meeting the shade of his mother when he goes to the underworld, because she was Odysseus's mother was actually there for most of the story, or most of the parts of the story that involve Penelope and Telemachus, because she was advising Penelope and being a good grandmother to Telemachus for quite a lot of the story of the Odyssey. But she dies before Odysseus can make it home because he's stuck first with Circe and then with Calypso. Um, so when he goes into the underworld after Circe lets him go and decides to help him, um, he meets his mother's shade, who has just recently died, waiting for him to return. Also, there's a really, really moving scene between Odysseus and the ghost or shade of Achilles, because Achilles is, of course, a massively heroic demigod, and like most of the massively heroic demigods um, in the ancient Greek world, they get to go to the Isles of the Blessed, um, which is it's basically the VIP section of the underworld. And in the Odyssey, we find that Achilles has effectively been named um, king of um, the Isles of the Blessed because he's such a big fucking deal after the Trojan War. And Achilles says to Odysseus, "I may be a king among the underworld, but I would trade it all away and every last ounce of my glory away if it meant being able to be in the world of the living just once." And furthermore, Achilles asks about how his son is doing because Achilles realizes only after dying that all the effort he put into winning glory for himself and becoming the figure of legend we know him as is less important than the legacy of blood left by his bloodline via his son. But Achilles is effectively nowhere to be seen in this version, and neither is Odysseus' mother. The one character of relevance to Odysseus we really get to see is Sinon, which doesn't even Sinon doesn't even come from the Odyssey. He comes from the Aeneid, which is a like Christianized latter day sort of twisted version of the Odyssey. Um, and of course, that is the character played by Elliot Page. And I'm not gonna give Nolan much shit about the casting thing, mostly because the casting thing was all anyone could fucking talk about the Odyssey in the lead up to its release, and there are so many more important things wrong with the thing than that. Um, I will be slightly annoyed that rather than adapt two of the most important and moving parts of the Odyssey with Achilles or with Odysseus' mother, that would have really emphasized the like bond between father and son that's so important between Odysseus, Penelope, and Telemachus, and it basically puts an even further boot up his ass to get home. God damn it! Um, but instead of adapting that, we get a character who wasn't even in the original Odyssey, and we get it as played by Elliot Page, which he tried, but he was miscast, and they didn't do what they should have done, which is in the Aeneid when they do introduce Sinon to the story, they have Sinon acting as a spy for the Greeks, which doesn't require a lot of physical imposition or upper body strength. But in this movie, we don't see Sinon acting as a spy for Odysseus or for the Greek army. We see him on the battlefield. And Elliot Page looks ridiculous in Greek armor trying to pretend to be a warrior. So it's just a damn shame that they decided to not only take something that isn't even from the Odyssey and put it in the Odyssey while leaving stuff from the Odyssey out, but also change the context of the character that they borrowed from the Aeneid so that the character is now a joke. Moving on.
Okay, I need to just real quick. So, start your rant about Cersei because I feel like that one's a big one.
Okay, so on to Cersei. Cersei is one of the most powerful and memorable characters in the entire fucking Odyssey. Furthermore, I'm actually going to side with the feminists on this one because, my God, what they did to Cersei would and should have every feminist who's ever called themselves a feminist angry. Because Cersei is supposed to be, and has been, according to quite a lot of feminist literature over the years, the only like character from fantasy or mythology that's more quintessentially feminist, like in terms of being used by the feminist movement, is probably Lilith. And even then, there's a significant argument that Lilith's popularity has only happened over the course of the last few decades, whereas Cersei has been having feminist interpretations ever since the beginning of the feminist movement, because she is so obviously and so quintessentially a symbol and an exemplar of feminine power, and literally reducing men to pigs with the power of her beauty and her sexuality. And so you would think that a modern day quote unquote intellectual, fucked as the intellectual ecosystem is by feminism, you would think a modern day intellectual cinephile TM like Christopher Nolan would absolutely fucking cream himself over the opportunity to craft a portrayal of one of the most femininely powerful figures in any story or mythology ever, period. But instead, what they do is they don't lean into her being a powerful, seductive, succubus-like sorceress who, through the power and grace and dominance of her beauty, turns men to pigs. No, what they do instead is they don't even keep Cersei a sorceress in like the clearly delineated sense that she is a sorceress rather than a witch, but they turn her into a very stereotypical old, like, Baba Yaga style crone, and they make her constantly afraid of men abusing her and raping her and victimizing her. I'm sorry, what? You turned one of the most powerful and graceful and beautiful, and I'm gonna give the feminists this olive branch and say justifiably actually like pro-feminism characters in mythology, and you turned her into a ugly, withered old crone who's paranoid and afraid about constantly being victimized. I never thought I would find myself like siding with feminism, but if there's a character that is justifiably useful to feminism, Cersei is probably it. Um, and I guess we can confirm that if Christopher Nolan considers himself a feminist, he probably considers himself the sex negative women are victims kind of feminist rather than the sex positive women are better than men because of their sexuality and their power and their grace and their dominance and their beauty and shit. I guess he's of the
I'm
women
back.
are victims of everything school of feminism rather than the women are powerful and beautiful and girl bossy and yay sort of feminism. Because, my God, turning one of the most beautiful and powerful, seductive sorceresses of Greek mythology into a paranoid, victimized old crone constantly worried about people raping her. Like, hell, Brainstormer, I know you know about Epic the Musical, because you're one of the people who got me into Epic the Musical. Did they or did they not emphasize multiple times, as in like 3 separate songs, how powerful and dominant and all powerful Cersei was within the context of her domain?
Yes.
Not here. Also, speaking of things the Epic the Musical modernized so much better in the Odyssey than this fucking thing, part of why she is so determined on turning any visitors to her island into animals is because she is the most powerful of her sisters, who are all nymphs, and she doesn't want any harm to come to them. But in this movie, she just turns her sisters into animals, quote unquote, because we get along better that way. So, to recap, you turn a powerful, seductive, sorceress goddess who, through the power of her sexuality, turns men into pigs, and does so partly for her own amusement and because she's powerful and she enjoys flexing on them, but also to protect her sisters. Um, they turn this character, this figure, into a ugly old crone who basically lives in a cottage instead of a palace, and who turns the sisters she's supposed to be protecting into animals. I guess we're supposed to assume because they annoy her when they're not animals. Fuck you with every conceivable sharp object on the face of the earth and several geographic geographical fucking mountain tops, Christopher Nolan. Seriously, fuck you. Again, I never thought I would see myself fighting on the side of feminists, but the feminists who are justifiably angry at what you did to Cersei, no, I'm not. I'm on their side here. I'm co-signing this. I, as a tripled gay MRA, am going to fight on the side of the feminists here because what you did to Cersei is just utterly criminal. Fucking Justice League Unlimited got Cersei more right than you. Which, granted, isn't hard because Justice League Unlimited is one of the best fucking cartoons ever made, and Christopher Nolan is a fucking hack who, for some cockamamie pretentious fucking ivory tower reason, everyone thinks is the greatest director to ever fucking live. But yeah, no. A kid's cartoon that I grew up with in the late 90s and early 2000s understood the Odyssey better than you. The character of Batman from the DC animated universe understands the Odyssey better than you, and we haven't even gotten to what's really gonna hit my nuclear button in a second here. But continue on with your thing, Brainstormer.
Uh, I mean, I really got nothing else. Like I said, it's a pretty meh film. Like those were my biggest gripes that I brought up.
Okay. So so getting some of the probably more important but less likely to make me angry things out of the way. They changed the ending entirely. And hell, at one point in this version of events, Odysseus says that he didn't even want to make it home actually. And rather than bring order back to his fucking household and continue to rule until such time as he's willing to let Telemachus take over, he and Penelope fuck off into the sunset because Odysseus has shit to do, and basically leave Telemachus to rule in their steads. Also, not for nothing, but they completely shadow over the mother-son relationship between Penelope and Telemachus here. Penelope and Telemachus spend the most time in this movie talking when she's basically calling him a useless failure and resenting him for even needing to eventually take the throne because she wants the throne for herself. Don't you know? Derp. Ah, I can't fucking I cannot fucking I can't fucking believe anyone who's ever actually read or cared about the Odyssey is okay with what happened here. A lot of the like annoying stuff about this is just Christopher Nolan being Christopher Nolan. Like leaving the gods out, that's just Christopher Nolan being Christopher Nolan. Um Fucking demystifying and grounding necessarily everything he can and having an aversion to anything resembling aesthetics. That's just Christopher Nolan being Christopher Nolan. But shit like that, shit like changing the ending entirely, Odysseus admitting he never even wanted to make it home in the first place, and Penelope being a girl boss bitch to her own fucking son because she wants to sit on the throne, don't you know, and how oppressive and bullshit Greek society is. Okay, that's a whole other segue into another rant, but I will restrain myself for the moment. But shit like that just makes me literally angry. Like, I've long since accepted that I'm never going to like a single thing that Christopher Nolan does unless it's in spite of him rather than because of him. But shit like that shows that he had active malice towards the source material, and fuck you, Chris. But the thing that's gonna make me go nuclear, which is gonna surprise no one who knows me well, is the fucking literally special needs kindergarten understanding of the ancient laws of hospitality. Where to even fucking begin? Okay, first thing first, the laws of hospitality, aka Xenia, existed before fucking Zeus. Okay? The laws of hospitality, like the laws of fate, are something so fundamental to the Greek understanding of the universe that not even the gods are willing to violate them, usually. Yes, the gods occasionally test mortals by going in mortal guise, but that has nothing to do with why the laws of hospitality are to be upheld. The laws of hospitality go all the way back to the fucking primordials, for God's sake. If I heard the phrase Zeus's law one more time, I was going to fucking put my head through a wall. Because that's retarded by itself. Furthermore, for some reason conflating the laws of hospitality with the golden rule, which A, he doesn't understand either. So fuck you, Ben Shapiro. I don't care how much you personally liked the movie. Expanding the laws of hospitality into a version of the golden rule is not some kind of pro-Christian attempt to own the pagans. What it is a modern secularist atheist confusing two religious concepts that he knows nothing about either. Because 3, while there were rules about honor in relation to warfare, that did not extend to basically letting your enemies do whatever they wanted to you for no good fucking reason. And there definitely were breaches of hospitality that the guest and host could both do because both the guest and host had responsibilities under Xenia or under hospitality. But no, because for some reason the laws of hospitality have now been reinterpreted and expanded into a bastardized and childlike version of the golden rule, which doesn't even make sense in the Christian context. Fuck you. Because of that utter, again, special needs kindergartner understanding of hospitality, now we have to treat people we're actively at war with like guests, and also they have no obligations to us as their hosts or vice versa because Christopher Nolan does not know how the laws of guest and host work either, which are slightly separate from the laws of hospitality. But fuck you as well. I hate. You guys know me. You know how seriously I take bargains, bonds, and oaths. How seriously I take the concept of debt and obligation, especially in the old school, like multicultural, probably rooted in evolutionary psychology senses of those terms. So you cannot begin to imagine the seething fucking nuclear rage I have right now. Because I knew from the get-go that Christopher Nolan adapting The Odyssey was going to be an absolute shit show. I knew most of the shit he was going to do that were going to be stupid. But I had no fucking idea that he was going to specially single out something that I consider to be my only sense of morality and shit all over it with, again, a kindergarten understanding that is so basic, bitch, and primitive that it would get you landed in a special needs class. And you want to know what makes me even more infuriated? The thing that makes me even more infuriated is I know exactly why this happened. It's not because he wanted to be a good Christian and own the pagans. It's not even because he found it interesting in the Odyssey. It's because he has this modern man's attitude where everything in the past has to be more primitive, which includes both pagan morality and Christian morality. And that's why he has a less than grade school understanding of either. Because he thinks the past was this horrible, nihilistic shit stain, not only do the pagan understandings of morality get shat on, but so do the Christian ones that he conflates with said pagan standards. So, whether you're looking at this from the perspective of someone who has any love or understanding of history or mythology, whether you're looking at this as a polytheistic a polytheistic animist like myself or an occultist like myself, or whether you're looking at this from a like Christian theologian sense, or if you're looking at this from a just historical accuracy sense, this is entirely bullshit because Christopher Nolan needs to believe that morality was invented 20 minutes ago or 20 years ago or however long his personal time scale is. He basically needs to believe that his generation is the first generation of human beings to have any understanding of morality. And that's annoying enough when the Christians do it. As DT and I have argued about many times, I don't disregard Christian morality. What I disregard frequently is the idea that Christian morality invented shit that it just categorically did not fucking invent. It's when Christians take credit for something that can be found across cultures well predating any of the Abrahamic religions. It's when Christians take credit for shit that, frankly, is probably just rooted in human evolutionary psychology. But but much like the feminists, which I didn't think I would be siding with regards to the Cersei thing, I'm also siding with the Christians here because even in the context that Christopher Nolan conflated the laws of hospitality or Xenia with the golden rule. He also completely fucking misunderstands the golden rule. And so whether you are Christian, pagan, or somewhere in between, you have every right to be upset with this. And again, if it was just a background detail, didn't come up every 5 fucking minutes, maybe I could have just gone, Christopher Nolan doesn't understand this and move on. But he explicitly tries to make the golden rule and hospitality and what he calls Zeus's law like a central axis to the story. And so he explicitly demarks out the like laws of hospitality and the laws of debt and obligation and the laws of guest and host that I hold to be basically my only standard for morality. And he fucking earmarks them for special befucking. And that is why if I ever see Christopher Nolan walking down the street, I'm going to gut him and fucking hang him like a fucking noose from his own entrails. Because pissing on one of my favorite stories ever written, that's one thing. Pissing on history, that's another thing. But pissing on the closest thing I have to sacred beliefs, no, you can just fucking die. You can deal with me at full winter, fucking Christopher Nolan, because you're not just a hack and an idiot and a complete toothless fucking quasi-intellectual. You are morally repugnant to me, and your lack of understanding, or even attempted understanding of any of these concepts, violates everything I've ever held to be sacred. Fuck you, Chris.
You done?
Yes, now I'm done.
Moving on? Oh, god damn it. Well, hopefully.
Apparently, my phone was also done because it decided to boot me after that. But yeah.
Moving on. Get close to your mic.
Yes, moving on.
Okay. Give me one sec. Hello, Giant Troll. Good to see you, by the way. I'm doing well. Well, I've been busy, and I got sick, so I'm dealing with that.
You came in just after we finished our Odyssey review, BT.
And I got in here about 10 minutes, 12 minutes ago. He's catching up, so. He did ask, does Brother Where Art Thou count as an Odyssey adaptation?
I would say no. At most, you could call it a thematic adaptation. And as I have made quite clear, Thebes are at best tertiary to stories, in my opinion. You might say it's a story that has Odyssey references in it, maybe, but I would say no. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is not an Odyssey adaptation. Ulysses is probably still not an Odyssey adaptation, but that one is more explicitly trying to be adjacent to one, I guess.
I don't get a little close to your mic.
Sorry.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, better. Like, I could hear you, but you were just like, you were a little distant, so.
Sorry.
You're good. Alright, Alright, it's loaded. So Dolan sent this to me.
Mm-hmm.
London Review of Books, The Uncomplicated Man, written by Emily Wilson, uh, published August 13th, 2026.
Yeah,
Or
I should explain for context. Emily Wilson is an
closer to
academic.
your mic.
Yeah. I should explain for context. Emily Wilson is a academic who round about I think 2017 wrote or rather translated a modern feminist filtered version of the Odyssey. And she's also um the her version of the Odyssey is the one that Christopher Nolan credits with inspiring him to make his version. And it's funny because as we shall soon see, Emily Wilson watched Christopher Nolan's version. She's only just less angry about it than I am. Um, it's one of those I never thought I would. I never thought I would see myself fighting alongside a feminist, but here we are. Because I haven't, for full transparency, I have not yet read or listened to Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. I'm probably going to now, having seen her reaction to Christopher Nolan's version, because even if it is filtered through a feminist lens, she does actually seem to care about the Odyssey and what it means and what makes it important. So even if it's through a feminist lens, I probably still will read and then probably also buy um her version of the Odyssey eventually. Um like I said, this movie made me remember just how much I really loved the Odyssey was the first like Greek mythological story I ever fell in love with. And so for better or worse, this movie has inspired me to go looking for all the best versions of the Odyssey. And so now there are like 5 different versions of the Odyssey in my Amazon Save for Later cart. but but I guess I'm gonna have to add a 6th one because while on paper a feminist version of the Odyssey was not something I was ever gonna be on board for, but after having read this, Emily Wilson has proven to me that at the very least she didn't mangle the story. I because like I said with the Cersei thing, the parts of this movie that don't work refuse to work entirely regardless of their feminism. But yeah, we'll get into this is essentially Emily Wilson's review of the Christopher Nolan movie that her translation is apparently helped to inspire, and she's only just less angry than me. So this should be fun. Moving on.
Christopher Nolan's $250 million action movie, Homer's ancient Greek poem, is an entertaining way to hide from the high temperatures for a few hours. Nolan's trademark jumps and twists in the narrative structure are relatively easy to follow and appropriate for the Odyssey, a narrative of tales nested in tales. My teenagers had a good time. Unlike some of Nolan's other films, the Odyssey is not boring, thanks to the source material, which is impossible to mess up entirely. It's a family-friendly audiovisual spectacle, like an elaborate 4th of July fireworks display, and with about the same level of narrative and emotional depth. Okay, speaking as a guy who has prided himself on doing fireworks displays, there is a level there's a lot deeper level of narrative and emotional depth depending on how invested you are.
Yeah, it really does depend on how much you like fireworks. Because I will say definitively that I like just about every fireworks display I've ever seen better than I like this movie. Like I said, this movie has transcended being bad or being historically illiterate to actually, and I don't I don't put a lot of stock in morality, as you guys know, but Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey might actually be the line of where I start thinking maybe this art is morally repugnant because of the way it strawmans just about every culture in history, Christian, pagan, or otherwise, and the fucking grade school level understanding of like the moral complexities of human nature that it has. Moving on though.
Um, as in his previous films, Nolan is interested in the discontinuity of space and time, in magic, tricks, craft, technology, rivalry, substitution, mask, miscommunication, what we remember and what we choose to forget. And again, survival is portrayed as a kind of triumph. Yet again, there are long, claustrophobic scenes of drowning and near drowning, and technically impressive episodes in which buildings are engulfed in flames and vehicles explode. Yet again, we watch a male character's desperate quest to recover and revenge a female love object. I had hoped that Nolan's affinity with these Homeric themes might push him to new creative heights and enable him to conjure more believable characters, but The Odyssey features his usual combination of grandiosity and superficiality. Without a tub of wax for my ears, which Himesh Patel's ever anxious Eurylochus, Odysseus's doomed right hand man, used to sail safely past the sirens, I was exposed to the full din of thumping sticks, staffs, swords, and clashing armor, thunderbolts, crashing waves, grunts, screams, toppling palaces, and burning temples.
Okay, and sorry, I'm using Emily as a springboard here. If you wanted to talk about the horrors of war or like war crimes within a like Homeric context, there are contexts in which you can do that in the Odyssey, because the the returning Greeks are actually met with a array of storms on their way home, specifically because the gods judge them as having taken um too many liberties with their triumph and basically going too far over the line and violating things like the sacred law of sanctuary. Which again, Christopher Nolan, if he really wanted to have if he really wanted to have like Greco-Roman morality or Greco-Roman frameworks of ethics work into the story, he wouldn't just keep repeating Zeus's law over and over and completely fucking up how hospitality is supposed to work. He might have actually referenced the times early in the poem, or early in the poem timeline, I should say, because the story is told somewhat out of order. But early in the poem's timeline, several people go to temples for sanctuary, which is a thing in ancient Greece that wasn't supposed to be violated. And they actually do decapitate, murder, and or rape people who are seeking sanctuary by the temple. So you could have thrown that in there, Chris. Too bad you think ancient peoples were so primitive that you didn't bother. Derp. Moving on. Sorry. I need to address my cat.
Okay.
Yeah, Turner.
But unlike Matt Damon, the wax-free Odysseus who is tied to the mast as he is conveyed past the sirens, naked ladies reclining on some uncomfortable-looking rocks. I gazed at the shipwrecks and bloodbaths without any agony or of emotion. My eyes stayed dried, even for Argos the dog, whose adorableness as a puppy is predictably amped up to suit our animal-loving times, if only the human characters had been treated with such serious attention.
Yeah, no, Christopher Nolan doesn't do emotions. Any emotions you feel Any emotions you feel while watching a Christopher Nolan movie are entirely someone else's work. The man cannot understand emotions. Moving on.
The Homeric epic was already an adaptation. The poem used a relatively new technology written alphabet to rework existing mythical traditions, reshaping the story of a veteran's homecoming to resonate with the complex concerns of Greek speakers in the archaic period, an era of migration, colonization, and urbanization. Some 7th century BCE Greek communities were ruled by an oligarchy, some by a single man. The poem traces the tension between the needs and desires of groups of men, Odysseus' comrades, or the suitors of his wife Penelope, and thus of a single powerful and cunning man who wants to rule them all and win eternal fame for himself. In a period of cultural and technological change, it explores a fantasy of going back in time as well as space, while also showing its dangers and costs. The poem wrestles with the challenges of encountering strangers, of entering their homes and welcoming or rejecting them from one's own. The contemporary resonances are obvious, and Nolan's movie hints at some of them in interesting if scattered ways, but the film's vision is too confused, its characters too underdeveloped to deliver what it half promises in terms of big ideas, although it is very good at conveying big bangs and big giants.
I would go so far as to say it's not even very good at that because, again, they cut out basically all of the banter or dialogue with Polyphemus, and um, they left out the fucking nobody scene, the literal inciting incident of the story. So, and I already went over the cheap, tawdry victim LARPing they did with Cersei instead of letting her be powerful and feminine and seductive and hell, I'll even go so far as to say feminist because turning men to pigs and shit. Like most of the time, I balk at the appropriation of feminists. And I guess on some kind of paper, I still do a little bit, but with Cersei, I can at least go if you're gonna pick like an exemplar of the ideals of your movement, you could do worse than Cersei. Probably probably only Lilith is more um beloved as an icon by feminists mythologically speaking, and that's a fairly modern recent development as knowledge of Lilith's role in the Abrahamic mythos um, is sort of coming back into vogue. Moving on.
Alright, adaptations shouldn't follow the original with anything like the exactitude of a translation. Some of the best radically transform or resist the source material, proving what Harold Bloom called strong misreadings of their ancestors. The most memorable creative responses to the Odyssey, such as Euripides' Helen, Virgil's
Aeneid.
Need, Milton's
Aeneid.
Paradise Lost, Aeneid. Uh,
Aeneid.
I'm not going to pronounce it right, Don. You know this.
Yes, I know. Go ahead.
Milton's Paradise Lost, Joyce's Ulysses, Walcott's Omeros, Atwood's Penelopiad, Madeline Miller's Circe, or Lisa Peterson's play set in a modern migrant camp. Reconsider the poem's structure, narrative, and values. In theory, Nolan seems to understand the assignment and its hazards. His first film, following 1998, was a powerful black and white thriller about the fascination and dangers of tracking strangers through space and time. The hunter is more likely to become the hunted, following suggestions if the would-be stalker lacks a clear identity beyond a misplaced belief in his own ingenuity. but knowing what temptations should be avoided isn't the same as avoiding them, as Odysseus's men learn to their cost when they kill the sacred cattle of the sun.
Yeah, they kill sometimes Helios, sometimes Apollo's cattle, and it doesn't go well for them. But being that as it may, I haven't read all of the ones she listed there. Um, I have skimmed a couple. Like I've skimmed Cersei, because again, Cersei might be my favorite non-Odysseus character in the Odyssey, with the possible exception of Athena. So the idea of a version told from her perspective, or at least trying to tell from her perspective, was interesting to me. Um, but I can tell you that every single one of the ones she listed probably have a better understanding of the Odyssey than the one, um, the one that we got from Christopher Nolan. And here's the thing: I'm not even opposed to quote unquote modernizing the Odyssey, as I've already covered. Epic the Musical does a really good job with that, as does Stephen Fry's version of that. But it's it's a Chesterton Spence thing, where in order to make meaningful changes, you have to understand the thing you're adapting. And I don't think Christopher Nolan has anything above like a TikTok shorts level of understanding from the Odyssey. Now, mind you, my standing, what I normally what I normally aspire to do whenever I think about adapting anything, especially something that has a lot of different versions, is I take the best, or I try to take the best bits from every version and like crystallize them and sort of amplify them. That's why. That's why, for example, I was slightly disappointed that Masters of the Universe, or from earlier this year, only adapted the '80s version and didn't take parts of the 2002 version into account. And the Odyssey, if you wanted to do the Odyssey my way, i.e., take the various different versions and iterations and take the best bits and then amplify them, the Odyssey would be a fantastic example to do that with, because there are so many different translations of the Odyssey and adaptations of the Odyssey, and each of them focus on a unique and different part of it. So doing it that way would have been really, really lucrative, I think. But you didn't even necessarily have to do it that way to make a good Odyssey adaptation. Hell, you don't even have to read a English translation of the Odyssey. You could literally just take Epic the Musical, the graphic novel adaptation of the Odyssey, and Stephen Fry's version of the Odyssey, and just like combine those three, and you would have a fucking amazing adaptation of the Odyssey, and one meant for modern sensibilities and eyes and ears and shit. But Christopher Nolan couldn't even be asked to do that, much less go back to like Alexander Pope and go all the way up to like Fagles or Fitzgerald and pick through all the best translations and shit. Hell, even if he had just adapted Emily Wilson's version, it would have gone better for him, because he tried to give her credit for inspiring him to do this, but then he didn't listen to her, as we'll see as we continue on here. Speaking of which, continuing on.
Alright. Homer's Odyssey makes it home because he is able. Homer's Odysseus makes it home because he is able temporarily to suppress his own desires for meat and wine for his wife, for control of his household and land, for slaughter, for victory over time and the threat of being forgotten, for a glorious eternal name. But there is no restraint in Nolan's version of the Odyssey. Every second is jam packed with incident, lights, and noise, and nothing is ever at a human scale.
And again, it ends up being utterly empty and in many cases just wrong headed. Moving on.
Nolan's spectacle threatens to drown out his story, just the towering waves of the wine dark sea, more gray than purple, threaten to overwhelm his hero's ship. In looks, this Odyssey is often reminiscent of other 21st century screen epics, not least Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. The visit to the land of the dead reminded me of the excursions beyond the wall in Game of Thrones. At the end of the film, which draws heavily on Tennyson's poem Ulysses, a character sets out to sail beyond the sunset, as the crowd, lavishly dressed in Renaissance fair garb, assemble on the dock to bid farewell to the Viking ship. Uh, I almost expected everyone to break into Elvish.
Also, okay, you're being a little bit overly charitable to him there, Emily. This movie wishes it could be as visually good as Lord of the Rings. This movie, this movie would sell its soul to look as good as Lord of the Rings. I don't even think it's trying to look like Lord of the Rings. I think it is trying to look more like a Game of Thrones, um, than a Lord of the Rings, because that suits Christopher Nolan's like nihilistic levels of materialism and just I'm not even gonna give him the dignity of calling it rationalism. This just computerized ism that is Christopher Nolan's lack of an eye towards anything aesthetic. But also, yes, the style of ship that they sail for most of the movie is wrong. In this movie, Chris has them sailing in a Viking longship rather than a Greek sailing ship of the period, or even the period where the story was written down. Because that's the thing. Most versions of the Odyssey, when they adapt the Odyssey into like a visual medium, they don't go off the aesthetics of when the Odyssey is supposed to be talking about. They go off the aesthetics of the period the Odyssey was spoken and written down. But even then, they fucked that up here because they had him in a Viking longship rather than a Greek ship. But given how much else there was wrong with the thing, that's so far fucking down on my list of reasons to bitch. Moving on.
Okay. Uh, the film has none of the sparseness of uh, Umberto Pasolini's The Return, 2024, starring a scarred, desperate, most likely naked Ralph Fiennes, conflicted about his homecoming to a convincingly unhappy Juliette Binoche. Lacking the budget for gods or special effects, the film invited us to wonder what remains of the Odyssey and its hero when stripped down to the sinews in the hungry heat. Nolan gives us an all-inclusive buffet.
He didn't include the gods. He didn't include half of the monsters. He didn't include most of the characters. Um, he, I mean, in terms of yes, there was visual noise essentially going on, but even the visual noise, as with most of Christopher Nolan's big set pieces, were quite flat because the man does not he has no eye he has no eye for stylization or color or grandiosity. He tries to take the highest, most high-minded concepts and ground them so far into the earth that you forget they were ever high-minded to begin with. And in some context that can work, like Interstellar, or like what he tried to do with Inception, even though that doesn't really work either. But but here there was there were action scenes, but those action scenes didn't amount to much more than go into place, run out of place. Moving on.
Alright. Uh, there are more female characters than in most Nolan movies, thanks to the source material. I had high hopes for Lupita Nyong'o's double part as Helen and Clit.
Clytemnestra.
Thank you. I did not know that was a character, by the way.
Clytemnestra?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Clytemnestra is Helen's sister and the wife of Agamemnon, who, when he gets back from war, betrays and kills him, convincing her children to leave the palace, only to return when they've grown and kill both her and her lover who helped usurp Agamemnon, Aegisthus.
Okay, again, I didn't know. Any adaptation I've seen never made mention of that.
Yeah, most of the time the Agamemnon stuff gets cut because it's not really directly related to the plot regarding Odysseus, Penelope, or Telemachus.
Yeah, so.
I mean, if you have to cut something, it is probably smart to cut. Stephen Fry's version leaves it in, and I think weaves it in really well. Um, but yeah, I understand that it's effectively an aside. It's not even a B plot. It's just sort of a plot cul-de-sac. So I understand why a lot of things cut it. Um, Here, I think they left it in just so that Lupita Nyong'o could have more screen time. But oh, that was another thing. In the movie, Menelaus ends up maiming Helen for betraying him. No such thing happens in the story. None. Once he gets her back home, they actually kind of bury the hatchet, and not only is he happy to have her back, but she appears happy to be back by all intents and purposes. But again, we have to portray the past, especially the ancient past, as barbaric. So there's a scene where he fucking mutilates Helen's face because reasons. Moving on.
Da, 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 da. Fascinating choice, inviting us to consider the parallelism of these two adulterous wife characters. Uh, Nyong'o is mesmerizing for a few minutes she gets on screen, and I would have loved to see her evocation of the cleverness, deceitfulness, and insight of these mythical ladies, but the script allows only for a set of all too brief tableau of female victims, the bereaved mother, the abused wife.
Okay, I'm gonna say something rather controversial here. I think this would have gone better if Christopher Nolan had just adapted the Iliad rather than the Odyssey. Because the Odyssey is a mythological adventure story that contains probably the most mythology of any story in the Western canon. But the Iliad, as I covered at the beginning of my review of the Odyssey here, is mostly a war story. And Christopher Nolan, for better or worse, is good at, or is at least as good as he can be at adapting war stories. I think had he just adapted the Iliad instead of the Odyssey, I'd be less angry. Granted, I also like the Iliad a lot less because it is a war story rather than a mythological adventure story. But it at least would have lended itself better to Christopher Nolan's wheelhouse than the Odyssey. I still don't think it would have been as good as the 2000s Troy, which also left out the gods in that version, but it would have at least lended itself more to his filmography and his like style. Moving on.
All right. Uh, okay. Homer's Calypso was a wonderfully outraged operatic speech about divine double standards. Male gods can kidnap and rape any mortal woman they desire, but when a goddess tries it, Zeus and his cronies scupper her chances. It's a clever and comical distortion of the mythological facts. The poem's listeners know that it is primarily Athena, a female deity, who is taking Calypso's mortal victim away from her. Hermes, whom she's complaining to, is merely the messenger. And Eos,
Yeah.
goddess of the dawn,
Um.
Diana,
Ios.
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 Okay. As we've been reminded only a few lines earlier, has not been prohibited by the divine patriarchy from holding on to Thio, Thi- Tithonus? Tithonus?
Thetis.
Thetis. Okay. Charlize Theron's Calypso looks gorgeous, but she's never angry, never funny, never skilled in rhetoric, and never consumed by lust for her scraggly mortal victim. She's an unpaid therapist soothing the soul of the bedraggled PTSD-ridden Odysseus with drugs and gracefully listening to his disjointed tale of woe.
Yeah, I honestly think um Calypso and Cersei would have worked better if you switched the actresses around. If you have Charlize Theron playing Cersei, granted it would stop the writing from being absolute shite, as I already covered, but if you had Charlize Theron playing Cersei, and I don't even remember the actress's name um who played Cersei in Nolan's version playing Calypso instead, I think it would have worked a lot better. Because I feel like the actress who played Cersei in Nolan's Odyssey could have more convincingly played the like crazy stalker girlfriend role that Calypso kind of has in the Odyssey. Um, because here's the thing, in the original epic, both Cersei and Calypso wind up falling for Odysseus and keeping him for a while. Um, in Cersei's case, I think it's like 7 years. In Calypso's case, I think it's closer to 10. Um, but it, in in the original epic, um, it's especially funny because both Calypso and Cersei are nymphs. Um, it's why if I were adapting the Odyssey, it would be slight heresy for me, but I would probably leave out Calypso just because the plot points of Cersei and Calypso are so similar, and Cersei is the more interesting of the two. So I would probably just roll Calypso's role into Cersei a bit if I were adapting the Odyssey. But I feel like Charlize Theron could give more of the graceful, poised, powerful sorceress that Cersei is supposed to be, even excluding Christopher Nolan's writing, and the actress who played Cersei in the version that we have would be able to give more of the comedic beats and the like again the crazy stalker girlfriend vibe that Calypso has, assuming you wanted to have both. Moving on.
Similarly, Homer's Penelope gives the disguised Odysseus a wonderfully vivid account of a dream he has had about some geese in her yard being killed by an eagle. The eagle explained that the geese were her suitors, soon to be slaughtered by her returning husband. But in the dream, Penelope wept, suggesting a fascinatingly ambivalent response to the return of Odysseus and the imminent end of her long period of waiting like a bride for a husband. Nolan's Penelope has no dreams. Anne Hathaway's face is as expressive as ever, and she looks beautiful and mysterious, glimpsed mostly through the veil of a clever set design that separates the woman quarters from the main hall, but the script gives her nothing to do except yearn for Matt Damon for reasons unknown.
And
The
she
couple
doesn't.
had
Okay, going to disagree slightly with Emily here. The script does give her something to do other than yearn for Odysseus, which is bitch about why she can't sit on the throne a lot. I hate it. You know, in the original Odyssey, she loved and wanted Telemachus to be successful, and was honestly kind of partly hoping that even if Odysseus didn't come back, that Telemachus would grow enough, grow into enough of a man one day that he could kill them himself without Odysseus's help. Granted, she was very happy to have her husband back because that, like, there is there are very few love stories quite as wholesome as the love story between um, Odysseus and Penelope. Even though in the actual epic, um, Odysseus does cheat on her with um, Circe and Calypso, it's not voluntary. Like, he ends up having to sleep with them because they're goddesses and they're way more powerful than he is. And at no point does he betray Penelope in his heart. Like, he never thinks maybe I should stay here and leave Penelope forever. No, no. Dude is seriously on the one-itis for his wife. And in Stephen Fry's version in particular, this also happens in the actual epic as well. But in Stephen Fry's version in particular, um, there's a conversation between Odysseus and Calypso where Calypso is trying to understand why Odysseus wants to leave her because she's trying to. She basically offers him all the divine bling she can, up to and including immortality, to stay with her. And so when um, the gods finally command Calypso to let Odysseus go, um, she starts asking him questions about what Ithaca is like and what Penelope is like and what his kingdom is like. And she tries to justify it by, oh, maybe his home is so much prettier than here. Maybe his wife is so much prettier than me, and so on and so forth. And Odysseus just straight up tells her, at least in the Stephen Fry version, no, I know is Penelope was never as beautiful as you, Calypso, and I know that the years have aged her just like they have me, and so on and so on and so forth. But I care about her because she is my wife, and I love her, regardless of whether she's aged, regardless of the fact that Ithaca is a rather small kingdom and there's all sorts of problems with it. It's still my fucking home. So like stuff like that's really great. It's the Stephen Fry version. Um, Another reason why, like, a combination of Stephen Fry's version and Epic the Musical would be very, very accessible to modern audiences and still understand the story better than Nolan. Moving on.
uh, was I? But the script gives her nothing to do except yearn for Matt Damon for reasons unknown. The couple have no chemistry and nothing in common throughout his wanderings. The Usurious hmm. Odysseus clings to a little doll figure intended to represent his wife. Like the spinning top clutched by Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception, the real woman is barely more interesting.
Yeah, and it sucks because, again, Odysseus and Penelope are one of the all-time relationship goals for, like, characters, period, and none of that. And in fact, several times, like I said, Odysseus said that he didn't even want to get home, And Penelope was more concerned about keeping herself on the throne than her son being raised properly or her husband coming back. Oops, Chris. Moving on.
Alright. Um, it is a challenge to represent deities on film without veering into Clash of the Titans silliness, so Nolan may have been sensible to leave them out. Even Zendaya's underwritten Athena turns out to be a vulnerable victim of war, or perhaps a projection of Odysseus's conscience, not a scheming and bloodthirsty war goddess.
Yeah,
Uh,
Athena is a PSD hallucination in Nolan's version. And also, what in the honest fuck, Christopher Nolan? Because speaking of extremely powerful and like agency having female characters, like Athena is the main driving force of Odysseus getting home because it's a like the Odyssey is a fantastic portrayal of the idea of having a patron deity. Because uh Odysseus is one of Athena's favorite humans because he exemplifies the virtues of strategy and tactics that she is the goddess of. And Odysseus knows that he is favored by Athena. In fact, when they talk in the poem, it's sort of like they're talking like old friends. Also, I can't believe I forgot to bring this up when we were reviewing it. But Mentor is supposed to be Athena in disguise. Glad that never comes up in the Nolan version. They're not even connected in the Nolan version. Because again, what is labeled Athena in the credits is actually just Odysseus's PSD hallucination and guilt over the war. But sure, Mr. Male Feminist, leave out all the most powerful female characters and turn the female characters you have left into shrewish harpies and traumatized paranoid victims. I'm sure that's exactly what female representation should be in 2026. You fucking hack. Moving on.
Alright. Other goddesses appear in cameo: Calypso, the siren, seal lady, sirens, Circe, Scylla, fucking, and Charybdis. But there's no
Charybdis.
sign. What?
Charybdis.
Carib? Really?
Yeah.
Huh. But there's no sign that we are supposed to realize they are goddesses. Poseidon, Hermes, and Helios do not appear in person, although there are some scary storms and shipwrecks. One of my favorite scenes was when Zendaya assures Damon that the gods are not hard for mortals to understand. Who doesn't understand thunder, fire? But the film wants to have it both ways. There are no gods, and yet shipwrecks and death are presented as the inevitable consequence of blinding the son of Poseidon and devouring the capital of the sun. Zeus' loss portrayed as being crucially important, and yet there is no Zeus.
Yeah, it's very much a modern ivory towered quote unquote intellectual atheist trying to tell a story wherein gods are actively characters and then just not like Christopher Nolan explicitly said he wanted to make the gods indistinguishable from the forces of nature because he thinks that's how the ancient Greeks would have understood them. Sorry, Chris. No. Can speak as a polytheistic animist and a practicing occultist here. We have manuals of Greek magic that are explicitly supposed to be used to fucking summon the gods. Just like there are still modern people today who have encounters with fucking angels and saints and the Virgin Mary and every other fucking thing else. Like, I know you're a coastal elitist prick atheist hipster Chris, but honey, people actually do believe and did believe in various supernatural things and were alleged to have active experiences with them. It wasn't just, oh, fucking Poseidon is what we call the ocean, or Zeus is what we call the sky or the lightning, or whatever the fuck else your fucking quasi atheist revisionist history bullshit modern Western mind thinks. Fuck you, Chris. Moving on. Brainstormer?
Yeah, sorry. Just stretching real quick. I'm
You
back.
good?
Yeah. Okay. uh, Nolan's vision of the world is not quite big enough to include either real gods or real people who might be different from us. There are giants, including Polyphemus, here alone Cyclops. It's overdressed that uh, that's the giants, right? How do you pronounce them?
Lastrodians.
Lestronians?
Lastrygonians.
Lestragonians. Cersei, played with earthly vigor by Samantha Morton, is Baba Yaga in a hands-on Gretel cottage. She uses a labor-intensive form of plastic surgery to turn Odysseus's greedy men into the pigs they already are. There's only one lotus heater, though the theme of amnesia takes on a new significance, as you might expect. Famous scenes flash by Scylla and
Charybdis.
Charybdis threaten the boat. Eurycleia recognizes the scar on Odysseus's leg. Uh, Antinous hurls a footstool at our hero in disguise. A few notable sequences from the epic scene. The film skips the island of Scheria, home of the helpful princess. Not to be, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. Helpful princess Nausicaa, Nausicaa,
Nausicaa.
where Homer's Odyssey tells the tall tale of his adventures to the hospitable Phaeacians.
Yeah.
There's no room in this maximalist film for anything as charmingly mundane and small scale as Nausicaa's laundry and her girlish fantasies about a husband. Damon's grizzled Odysseus is neither a master storyteller nor a flirt. More substantially, the inclusion of a friendly, wealthy, culture-rich foreign place would have added more confusion to the film's already muddled premise. This Hollywood version of Mycenaean Greece is the only civilization in the world. The only place that still just about remembers that strangers and beggars must be welcomed according to Zeus's law.
And again, Xenia predates Zeus. It, like the Fates, is one of the forces of nature that you don't mess with, even if you're a god in ancient Greece. And if I heard it called Zeus's Law one more time, I was going to put my head through a fucking wall. Moving on.
Okay, costumes, armor, boats, and architecture are a mismatch, which is in keeping with Homer's poem itself, drawn from many generations of storytelling, incorporating bits and pieces from different eras, dialects, and traditions. Linguistically, too, Homeric Greek is a composite, although it is always metrically poetry, not language anyone ever actually spoke. Despite the manufactured online rage, there is nothing inherently wrong with the movie's attempt to approximate contemporary American speech. I
Uh,
mean,
except except it sucks. That's the problem. Like I appreciate you trying to give Chris the benefit of the doubt here, Adams, but he didn't do any of the revisionist bullshit he did because he wanted to approximate the poem and its, mismatched thrown together aspect or anything. He did it because he thought they looked cool and he was lazy. Like I refuse to believe there's a high-minded fucking extrapolated reason. I think that's just you trying to be as charitable to him as you can possibly be while still acknowledging that it sucks. The problem is that even if there was a valid reason to alter it, again, I'm not even against modernizing the Odyssey. Epic the musical is great. Stephen Fry's version, great. You can modernize the Odyssey without making it shit. But Christopher Nolan did no such thing because to him, modernizing means rendering it as devoid of aesthetic as possible. And because of the way he views history, making a historical piece also makes it be as primitive and barbaric as possible. Because it's not like ancient peoples would have had their own conceptions of right and wrong or complexified reasons to do things. No, the past must be primitive and the present must suck. Therefore, everything must be miserable. Just miserable for different reasons. Primitivism in the case of the past, and shitty deconstructivism in the case of the present. Fucking hell. Moving on.
all right. Uh, Tim said, oh, okay, sorry. But writing dialogue is not one of Nolan's talents. The language is relentlessly expository, humorless, and flat. Attempts at vigorous speech, my dad's coming home, or let's get off this fucking beach, sit uncomfortably next to grandiose meditations. Yes, my queen. The breaking of Zeus' law, spreading like plague. Our age of bronze is collapsing, and maybe he couldn't bear to see the ruins of what he'd done anywhere, least of all his home.
Yeah, again, she did eventually get to the point, which the point being that it sucks. But it didn't have to. It could be modernized without making it suck. Like for all that Troy is kind of a cloud crowd pleasing blockbuster. Jesus fucking Christ. Um, it at least still modernized it without making it feel either empty or devoid of aesthetic. But Christopher Nolan is a robot, you see, and so he doesn't understand things like stylization or vocal inflection, apparently. That's why everyone in a Christopher Nolan movie always tends to speak in a monotone, except for people who choose to elevate the direction they're given, like a Heath Ledger or a Morgan Freeman. So we get the same computerized monotone we get in every Christopher Nolan movie or wannabe Christopher Nolan movie. Looking at you, Denis Villeneuve and Chloe Zhao. So you know, the cancer that is Nolan's style and aesthetic, or rather that his lack of it, continues to engulf all of quote unquote serious intellectual cinema. TM. Moving on.
As they say at the award shows, I was humbled to learn that Nolan has read at least the first line of my translation of the Odyssey into iambic pentameter.
Iambic pentameter.
In at least one interview, he cited my version of the First line of the poem. Tell me about a complicated man. But I would be ashamed to have written any part of this script. Sadly, Damon's Odysseus isn't complicated or wily or artful. One of Odysseus' funniest and most famous tricks in Homer is to tell Polyphemus that his name is Nobleman. When the blinded giant screams for help from his neighbors, the other Cyclopses are reassured to learn that no man is hurt again. In the movie, Odysseus doesn't have to outwit Polyphemus because the Cyclops is a puppet who has no wits. Nolan's grunting one-eyed giant is referred to as it, barely speaks, doesn't get drunk, and has neither neighbors nor a favorite sheep.
Yeah, no, it sucks. You all but cut the voice of a character called the many voiced one in the Greek. You absolute ass candle. Moving on.
Alright, perhaps more surprising from the director of Oppenheimer, Damon's Luminaxi Moxie. Odysseus also seemed to lack technological intelligence, polemic Kenya. Uh, he does not build a marriage bed out of a tree growing in his house. It would be a waste of effort since he so rarely seems to sleep or have sex. The raft on which he escapes from Calypso is cobbled together from a few bits of driftwood in contrast to the elaborate wood chopping and shipbuilding in Homer.
Yeah. In addition to his many crafty, in the figurative senses, things, Odysseus has the skills of a master carpenter in the poem or in the epic. So glad to know you uniformly removed his one defining characteristic, that being his fucking intelligence. Um, like I understand that other versions of the Odyssey, for example, the '97 movie version, were a little bit heavy-handed with his intelligence, like uh, Aeolus, the god slash king of the winds, um, in the '97 version says something to the effect of, or rather, Odysseus asks he's why Aeolus is helping him, and Aeolus says, you're the first mortal ever to use their mind," which is a bit heavy-handed. But good God, Odysseus's intelligence is his defining characteristic, and what makes Athena like him and patronize both him and his line in the form of Telemachus. So, like, cutting out any craftiness or cleverness at all, it just turns quote unquote Odysseus into every generic soldier protagonist of every war movie or post war movie ever. But that's what you wanted to do, wasn't it, Chris? You wanted to make fucking classical Greece into post 9/11 America or post Vietnam America. And so here we fucking are. Odysseus has to be Rambo because reasons. Moving on.
Um, we don't see the design or construction of the Trojan horse. Instead, a kitsch, poorly designed horse with no wheels appears on the windswept beach as if dumped there by drone. The difficulties of transporting large, unwieldy objects over difficult terrain must have been on the director's mind as he lugged his IMAX cameras through the film's many challenging locations.
Also, yeah, the IMAX thing doesn't add anything to the movie because most of what the IMAX screen would show is just empty space that Christopher Nolan doesn't use to like tell the story or even create interesting settings for the movie. Moving on.
Uh, Most obvious new spin that Nolan brings to the source material is a subplot based on a story from the I-
Aeneid.
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 Aeneid, whatever. Describing the way the Trojans were tricked into taking the Trojan horse, an invention of cruel Ulysses into the city, thanks to the machinations of a Greek double agent called Sinon. His name means harmful, in contrast to the relatively positive representation of cunning intelligence in Homer's Odyssey. Virgil makes Ulysses cruel and predatory. Sinon is his deceitful accomplice.
Yeah, part of the reason why I'm slightly annoyed that Christopher Nolan would borrow from the Aeneid instead of sticking to the Odyssey primarily is because when Virgil was writing it, he was writing it as a piece of basically pro-Catholic Church propaganda, and so we have to make the pagans, in particular the Greeks, look bad. Derp. I really, I mean, it's reassuring, I suppose, that Christopher Nolan can read if he's read the Aeneid, but then again, he also completely recomposes the context for Sinon and basically just plucks the character from thin fucking air and doesn't even have Sinon do the shit he does in the Aeneid. So never mind. I guess someone just told him, or maybe he skimmed the Wikipedia for the Aeneid. Maybe. Moving on.
Alright. Nolan's movie Sinon is played by Elliot Page, and far from being a bad guy, he's the film's moral center. He's recruited to the Trojan War as a plucky youngster thanks to the evil machinations of 18th draft dodger Antinous, played in adulthood by a charismatically slimy Robert Pattinson. The main emotional arc of the film concerns Odysseus' blatant realization that he is complicit in Sinon's exploitation because he failed to tell him the truth about the Trojan horse plot.
Yeah, also, instead of just having all the able-bodied lords um, go to war with them like, an ancient Greek would have, uh, Nolan has them set up a lottery so he can make commentary about draft dodging. In the in the epic, the reason why the suitors didn't go to war with the rest of the Greeks is because a lot of them were too young, because a lot of them are actually the children of the people that Odysseus would have fought with. Like, um, Antinous is the son of one of the people that gets killed in the Iliad, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but here, Nolan decides draft dodging commentary because reasons. Moving on.
Alright. Um, Once he recovers his memory, Odysseus is racked with guilt. The film doesn't address the moral dilemmas raised by its own narrative invention, such as why it matters so much whether Batman told the whole truth to Valiant Robin, given that he would be killed instantly either way, or why the sinless Sinon wants in on the scheme if the sack of Troy was as bad as the movie wants to suggest.
Yeah, it's all very stupid because Christopher Nolan doesn't actually think these things through. He just knows how to make himself look smart, like every other midwit hipster in the known universe. Moving on.
Okay. Uh, Odysseus lied as Sinon doesn't start the Trojan War. The Trojans would presumably have taken the horse into the city anyway, as they do in Homer's Odyssey. This muddled subplot is foisted on the film in order to make Nolan's relentlessly didactic point about the contemporary Anglophone world that the lies and xenophobia of the War on Terror and the Brexit began a cultural decline that is now destroying the values we hold most dear.
Yeah, yeah, the Bronze Age is ending thing. One, the Homeric Greeks wouldn't have even called it the Bronze Age. As far as they were concerned, they were in the Age of Heroes still. And even the Greeks that Homer would have been telling the story to wouldn't have considered it the Bronze Age because they didn't really differentiate things on the basis of the weapons they made. They differentiated things in kind of the mythopoetic sense of the age of gold, the age of silver, the age of bronze, the age of brass, and the age of iron. Um, but none of that comes up. What's important is that Christopher Nolan really wanted to own the the chuds who think that immigration is a bad thing, or that modern day multiculturalism is destroying the Western world or something. So let's stick the fall of the West into a period where the Western world as we know it was still in the making because reasons. Derp. Also, if we're supposed to, Chris, see the Bronze Age not in the way that the ancient Greeks would have seen it, but in the way that the modern historians see it, as in like the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, etc., then the Age of Iron is an improvement on the Bronze Age because it made for stronger weapons and more metallurgy. So your confused commentary about the like Age of Decay doesn't really work because iron is a better working material than bronze in many ways. Dumbass. Moving on.
Nolan's other major addition to Homer's narrative is a repeated reference to threats to our civilization from the Sea Peoples, a now debunked 19th century theory about maritime tribes who were thought to have attacked Egypt around 1200 BCE and to have also been responsible for the roughly coeval collapse of the Mycenaean, how do you
Mycian.
Mycenaean Greek culture. Our civilization is under attack. Penelope Wales, Odysseus comforts her by saying that a Bronze Age civilization, including literacy, will rise again from the ashes. The current consensus, as no one clearly knows, is that there is no such thing as the Sea Peoples, that the Greek-speaking worlds shift away from the more centralized, literate palace culture, the Mycenaeans, in the 11th century BCE, the fragmented social formations of the early Greek Iron Age was caused by a range of factors, including climate change, earthquakes, and internal unrest. Internal unrest. Nolan uses these competing historical theories to create a characteristic narrative twist about the identity of the Sea Peoples, which I will not spoil, though you can probably guess.
He basically makes a commentary where the Greeks themselves are the sea people to again own people who are worried about illegal immigration or over immigration in today's day and age. He makes the Greeks, including Odysseus, look stupid so that he can point at the audience and go, see how stupid your fears about immigration are, modern people? Cunt. Entire cunt. Moving on.
um, hmm, I don't know. Do you want to call it here and then we'll finish it next week?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Just because, like, we basically have an hour until midnight.
Mhm.
Alright, give me 1 second.
my phone decided it wanted to screw me.
Okay. To be fair, I was having issues on my end too, so
Lovely.
hey,
Very
better now towards the end than like earlier. So
true.
yeah. All right, so this is the official trailer for Violent Night 2. I just randomly came across this like a few days ago when it was released, and well, we liked the first one so much, I figure we should cover that, obviously.
Yeah. We should also cover the new Johnny Depp Christmas Carol thing called Ebenezer, I think.
Oh, I didn't. I don't think I saw that.
I'll have to check
We
it.
can cover it next week if you want.
Yeah. But candy canes?
Giant Turtle actually no, iron was a step down until steel was invented. Just that tin needed to make bronze was rare and needed long trade routes, which I'm gonna assume post Bronze Age collapse society couldn't maintain.
Well,
Move close to your mic.
well, true, but I doubt that Christopher Nolan can differentiate between iron and steel any better than he can between fucking the golden rule and the laws of hospitality, or indeed between anything that didn't exist when he was a kid and the ancient world. So as far as he is concerned, steel and iron are the same thing. So his commentary is stupid. Moving on. Candy canes.
Yeah, get to that.
On Christmas, I deliver presents to nice little boys and girls. If you're naughty, I deliver something else. Justice. But now, I'm on the naughty list.
Huh. I mean, to be fair, he did state in the first movie that if a naughty list existed back when he was human or mortal, he would have been on it.
Yeah.
Though it makes me curious, what landed him on this now, after all this time?
I assume that the events of the first movie reignited his lust for battle, and so he's starting to essentially be a vigilante when people are on the naughty list.
Yeah, I can
Granted,
see that.
granted that kind of shits on the possibility that I thought about when we watched the first one, which was a sequel where Krampus is the villain. I mean, they could still do something like that, but I have many irritations about this. Also, the whole losing his powers again for the sake of the budget, I guess, is annoying. I I accepted that they needed to depower him for the sake of the first movie because budget, but the first movie did well enough they could just increase the budget and have a fully powered up Santa kicking ass like 5 from Umbrella Academy. And I would have preferred that. But candy canes.
It's a tab, because I thought someone would be typing, but nope.
Forgot the meaning of Christmas? What does that even mean? I don't want to alarm anybody. There may not be another Christmas ever again.
Why not?
Santa got put on the naughty list.
What do you do?
Maybe I killed too many people. I don't know. I lost.
Huh.
course, this raises questions also about his like power source. Because I kind of assumed, based on the fact that he's very obviously a Viking in the first movie, that he was given his powers by Odin under Odin's guise as like the Yule Father, and that just kind of carried over into Christmas when Yule and all the other pagan like solstice festivals got woven into Christmas. So this, yeah, because he was very obviously a pre-Christian Viking in the flashbacks. So like, there are many questions here. Maybe we'll get more into the mechanics of how his powers work. I would have liked to have seen that by him using them to kick ass and take names again, a little bit like Five
Don't get
Umbrellas.
don't get closer to your mic.
Okay, yeah. What I was saying was maybe we'll get more into how his powers work in the sequel. Although, granted, I would have liked to have seen them. I would have liked to have seen them explored by him actually using them, kind of like Five from Umbrella Academy. But oh well. Candy canes.
All right.
My powers. How am I supposed to find the meaning of Christmas in a place like this?
What do you need? Little nose candy?
Get out of here!
Last Christmas,
Mason, he owns this town and the cops. We need you.
I gave you my heart,
Kill Santa Claus. I know this will help us.
but the very next
Well, having it set in a mall seems pretty.
On point, I guess.
Yeah. A mall Santa and all that.
Well, and here's the question: why does the new bad guy Mason believe that he's Santa if he doesn't have his powers? Like the previous bad guys were convinced they were fighting Santa when he started, albeit not as much as he was normally able to, doing the use of magic against them thing. But this guy has absolutely no reason to believe that he's fighting the real Santa if he's currently without his powers full stop.
I don't know.
Candy canes.
day, you give it away.
It's time to save Christmas and get off the naughty list.
Last Christmas,
I'm trying to avoid violence.
Took a man's forehead skin off with a cookie cutter. That is horrifying.
Also hilarious.
Or she find that hilarious.
It's hilarious-fying.
I would have gone back.
Or hilarious.
Yes.
Also valid, but anyway, candy canes.
Yeah.
Yo, is it me or does
No, that guy smells amazing.
last Christmas,
I mean, it's still funny. They've still got the like comedic energy the previous one had.
Like, okay. I think that was a King Batch or something. It's like that Viner has done some like acting a lot better than I think like the Paul brothers. I think
Mm.
I don't see him a lot in stuff though.
Mm.
Hello?
Yeah.
Alright. Okay, guys.
Candy canes.
Don?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Candy canes.
I got reinforcements coming.
Get your own man. He's taken.
That's my wife!
Okay, so either whatever mystical MacGuffin made them both immortal, or he has the power to share his immortality.
Out of that, they go with the theory that I came up with, which was she might be some type of like Valkyrie or spirit.
That would also be good, which would explain why she is able to cast and take names despite being.
Although with Valkyries, that's tricky simply on the fact that in the lore they're actually not really supposed to be engaged with men. So
Yeah, there's lots of deeper mythological questions that we're probably not going to get answered, even though
yeah, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna do Valkyrie, but she's separate in some regard. That's clear.
either that or he has the power to share his powers. But
Yeah.
one assumes that if his powers were on the fritz, hers would be as well.
Okay, kids.
Candy canes.
You're in trouble now!
Santa is real.
Damn right I am. Any last words? Make my sleigh.
Okay,
Uh,
that one was just corny enough to be funny. The
Well, I
only
also-
the only joke I kind of objected to is the big Nick energy. That was uncalled for.
Hey, Don. Okay, I literally had no idea what you're saying. Could you get close to your mic?
I said that one was just corny enough to be funny. That last joke. The only joke I kind of objected to a little bit was the big Nick energy one, because that was just too low. I'm sorry. But anyway, moving on to Coyote versus Acme.
All right. Oh, it does look like they were rekindling their. It looks like their relationship's been rekindled. Uh, because in the first one it said they were kind of on a break.
Yeah, that's good. Although the fact that he had to call her for reinforcements does potentially imply that they're still not on good terms, but that she's still willing to come bail him out.
Well, they did show a scene where they were making out. So
My guess is they'll still start the movie on not so good terms, but not so bad of terms. Which is not gonna just leave him.
it's better than what it was. It was better than what it was in the first movie. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
And this movie will probably end with them fully rekindling the spark. Probably.
Coyote vs. Acme final trailer.
Not sure what pause word to use. I feel like there's a I feel like there's a Acme related food thing we could be
Cream pie?
doing.
No.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna go banana.
Banana.
Uh,
Looney Tunes is still funny.
alright.
No notes.
Banana.
Banana.
Have you ever set a big stack of TNT on the road, hoping to blow up your nemesis, but the detonator itself explodes? Have you ever pulled the ripcord of your parachute and only a bunch of silverware comes out? It's not your fault. Acme is evil.
Yeah, it's weird. Acme's been okay. I have seen 2 live-action Looney Tune movies that have portrayed the Acme Company as villains.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Yeah, I fucked it up. I know I did. I was trying to do the fucking thing, and I fucked it up.
I got you.
Yeah, Looney Tunes Back in Action. Good movie, by the way. Actually, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, really fucking good movie, actually. I really like Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Yeah. All right.
Banana.
Banana.
You're looking at the guy who is taking on the biggest corporation in the world.
They're suing us for every Acme product.
Acme denies all charges. That is for you. All I gotta do is walk out the store right now. Please don't. This is not funny. I thought cartoons are supposed to be funny.
You
I mean,
sir
to be
have
fair-
you
Sorry.
sir have no taste if you think if you think the coyote is not funny, then you sir have no taste.
Well, obviously, in the context, it's not
Yeah,
funny.
they're suing him, and or he's suing them, and so on, and they have to be like abrasive. But it's like, if you can honestly tell me that you do not find the classic Looney Tunes funny, then you are a humorless bastard. And think about who is saying that.
John Cena as a comedic villain.
I think it works.
Yeah. I mean, Peacemaker, so.
Yeah, it definitely works. Although it makes me want to see a scene where he like rips his shirt sleeves off and then like physically assaults the coyote in court or something. Just to play into the like
Shut the fuck
wrestler image.
But I also, okay, here's the thing with these kind of movies. They sell you on the comedy, but then they always get you with the emotional.
I'd be fine if they just leaned into the strength of the like setup of the legal drama aspect.
Well, I think that's what they're gonna. Obviously, I think that's what they're gonna do with the added Looney Tune-ness. But I mean, to be fair, again, those legal things also always tack on. Well, not tack on, but there's always a level of like humanity added to it. So
This reminds me a little bit of Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. The end with the like sanctified legal drama there.
yeah. Banana?
Banana.
It's exciting. All eyes on you, ready to show what you got.
Acme has knowingly been making dangerous products for decades. Is there anyone in the whole world who cares what happens
to the coyote and
Yes. Coyote's one of my favorite characters. I know that's the bit. I know you're the prosecuting attorney, Foghorn, but I for one care what happens to the coyote. The coyote keeps getting the short end of the stick.
I mean, he is trying to kill and eat someone. He's not gonna.
That part always baffled me. If you have all the access to the mail order shit and obviously the money for the mail order shit, why not just order food?
I'm gonna be honest. I think it's just for the love of the game at that point.
Well, yeah, it's the stubbornness of like I have spent 60 fucking years trying to get this Roadrunner, and goddamn it, I am going to get this. And to be fair, the Roadrunner gives as good as he gets most of the. See, that's the thing. That's why I don't feel bad for the Roadrunner, because the Roadrunner actively seeks to harm the coyote, and so yes, while on some kind of paper I feel bad for the prey animal for being a prey animal, when said prey animal gets snarky and decides to trap his predator in a trap thousands of times worse than what he would do to him if he caught him, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy.
Don, you don't have any sympathy for anyone. Most of the time.
I'm glad you added the proviso, because you are one of the few people on this planet I have some level of sympathy for, and I have been very explicit about providing that sympathy on occasion. So you, sir, have no leg to stand on if you're going to say I have no sympathy. Because you are one of the few people on this earth that benefits from my sympathy.
Hence why I added most of the time.
Yeah.
And
Anyway.
I was about to be more referential to like just
Me being a cold, heartless cunt? Yes.
no. Actually, it was more that you're very selective about the sympathy because, well, I mean, to be fair, most people are.
Most people aren't worth my sympathy. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not even really going to try and fix that. There's no fixing that at all.
Nope. People either have to get better, or they have to make do without my sympathy. It really is a skill issue. Be better, humanity. Banana.
Okay.
oh, yeah, I do. He's one of the most hardworking people I've ever met. He would never think of quitting. And I think everyone should be inspired by that. I don't just want him scared. I want him.
I'm in.
Yeah, no, I am entirely in, and I'm glad this looks as good as it is, because it is criminal that they almost didn't release this.
All right. Banana.
Banana.
We're all counting on you. Bye. I'm here for the pantsless modeling gig.
What'd you see?
I thought.
Utah? I don't pay you to tink Utah. I pay you to talk.
I did.
Question: why are so many of the Looney Tunes working for Acme? Are Titans that hard? That you have to go to work for the Soulless Corporation?
It only seems to be Tweety Bird. And
well, Foghorn is the prosecutor, so he appears to be on the Acme payroll as well.
Could just be the birds.
It could be. This could be a bird tune versus
the rest,
like carnivore tune dichotomy here.
All right.
It'd be really funny if the Roadrunner himself was like the CEO of Acme by the end or something. And if that actually is what happened, I want the kudos. God damn it! I am earmarking it here for posterity. If it turns out that the comedic bit at the top will be kind of like at the end of Duck Amuck or Rabbit Rampage, and it'll be the Roadrunner who's the CEO of Acme Corporation all along. I want the kudos.
All right.
Ta!
What did you tea? What did you talk?
Only in theaters August 28th. Get
Oh shit.
This month.
Okay. Well, to be fair, we had this trailer we've had for like what, a few weeks
Few
now.
weeks, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
And I can't imagine the marketing is super big considering that the studio releasing this movie didn't even want to release this movie. And again, for shame, you evil idiots, you. Turns out Warner Brothers was Acme Corporation all along. Incidentally, do you know that Acme was originally actually a mail order company?
I did not.
That's why the Looney Tunes used that, is because Acme was a mail order company at one point.
Oh, okay, Johnny. We should have gone with Roadrunner for the food.
I thought about going with the bird seed, but it just didn't seem right.
Should he be able to talk here because he can when crossing over with other tunes like Bugs?
That was gonna be my question. Are we gonna get Wile E. Coyote Super Genius at some point here? I'm fine if he stays quiet because I think it works better comedically that way. But at least in the scenes with Bugs, him having his like posh British accent. And by the way, Warner Brothers, I will buy like 10 tickets for this movie myself individually if you got Kelsey Grammer to be the voice of the coyote when he does speak in his super genius accent. If y'all were Warner Brothers, if you were smart enough to get Kelsey motherfucking Grammer to do the voice of Wile E. Coyote Super Genius in the scenes where he crosses over with Bugs, I will buy 10 tickets to this movie. I know they're not going to, but as long as we're making fanciful wishes, like this movie even being released is a fandom win, so yay. But
Okay.
as long as we're hoping for far-flung fandom wins, Kelsey Grammer is the coyote. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom. Fuck off, and good luck in your pursuing of various birds, I suppose.
you had no idea how to finish that, did you?
I knew kind of what I wanted to go with for the joke, but I didn't know how to phrase. I almost went with like bird tunes, but that didn't work. I almost went with Roadrunners, but that doesn't work. So I guess the setup is for the birds. But Tish.
Okay, on that sad, pitiful note of a joke. Bye, guys.
Bye.